What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Football Diary. In today's video or live stream or podcast episode, whatever you're, watching or viewing it on, we're just going to be giving a bit of some previews into some NFL games, going over some matchups that we really like. There's a lot of really good games to look at. But before we do that, we do have a couple of topics that we do want to bring up. Matt, do you want to let them know what the first topic is going to be?
Yeah, so you guys can't really see, but I have two 49er banners in the back. And wanted to talk about the Los Angeles Rams, not really because of the Niners game, but obviously the Niners just absolutely decimated them. And throughout this season, I think that the Rams have been a pretty disappointing team, not in terms of record, but like they're not going out there and really dominating the way that I thought they would. I will also say I had the Rams winning the NFC West. So if they lose it to the Cardinals, that's still below expectations for me. Like I thought they were going to be the best team in the NFC West, and I thought there was potentially three playoff teams in there, maybe even four. Like a very very strong division. So I thought they were going to be a powerhouse. I didn't think it was going to be like, could the Rams get knocked out a lot earlier than we expect? It's starting to feel like that a little bit. I just feel like they haven't put together a ton of great games. I feel like they're a prime team to get upset in the first round. That's honestly how I feel. And I'm a big Matthew Stafford fan as well. Like I think he's a top 10 quarterback. I think he's an elite quarterback. And I'm feeling like this. And there's like, I'm just confused because I didn't think that I was going to see this team struggle the way, not really struggle, but just not look as sharp as I expected them to. I don't know. What do you kind of feel like? Because I'm definitely like not as honed in on them, but I'm definitely looking at their success and critiquing it probably harder just watching them as a Niner fan, but I don't know.
Yeah, this Rams team, I mean, I love the roster. I felt like this was just a great roster to have. But, I mean, it's just gotten to a point, like they started off so well. But, Matt, you're kind of right on, like, the schedule that they've played. They beat the Texans, the Lions, the Giants. They had some good wins. They beat the Bucs. That was a good win. They beat the Seahawks. Decent win, I guess. They beat the Colts early, and at the beginning of the year, for some reason, everybody thought that the Colts were terrible. The Colts were not terrible. They literally had a difficult start to the season in terms of schedule, and obviously they're picking it up now and they're getting recognized for
and
it.
Injuries.
Yes, also injuries. Quentin Nelson ended up getting hurt in the beginning of the year. He's back now. I don't think they had their offensive tackle at the beginning of the year. The Chiefs guy, I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. But Matt, I'm going to go a step further. I don't know how aware you are of their schedule for the rest of the year. There's a chance that the Los Angeles Rams don't make the playoffs. They play the Jaguars. I'm going to give them that win. That's 8 wins. Other than the Jaguars, they play the Packers, the Cardinals, the Seahawks, the Vikings, the Ravens, and the Niners. That is very difficult.
Really?
That is very, very difficult. I think this is a great team. They could very well win all of those games, and I wouldn't be that surprised. But also, this is a team that has shown that they can get completely outclassed in games.
So wait, real quick, you're telling me that Week 17 Niners-Rams game could potentially have one of them missing the playoffs, because if the Rams had a skid, you can be what are they going to be after this week? I'll give them the win against the Jags too. They're going to be 8-3. But you can fall off and be at 11 wins and be fighting for a seed. Maybe not in this year's team. I don't know. It's tough. It's
really tough. But I feel like they're almost the Packers of years past. The Packers haven't shown this problem this year, but the Packers used to go out and they would play against, let's say the Chargers. I believe that happened. Or the Niners as an example. And it was just they got out physical and they just got completely beaten. Just early in the year last year, Aaron Rodgers just went out there against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and just got slaughtered, and it was terrible. But then they go out there and they win these big games. And the Rams are starting to seem like that team to me where it's talent-wise, roster-wise, coaching-wise, they should be able to play against anybody. But some weeks they come out and they just get completely pushed around. And I don't want to take anything away. I think the Titans are an underrated team in the league. I think the Niners are a team that's pretty underrated, or at least they've just underperformed. I'm still high on the Niners. Not like they're my number one team to win the Super Bowl or anything like that, but they're a decent team, and they've had the
light
Rams
schedule.
number. Yes. Like, I don't know. This Rams team's just like they kind of fall apart, and I don't know where that's coming from. I think maybe it's just a lack of leadership, and they have a lot of guys that have been leaders before. I mean, guys like Von Miller now coming in. Obviously, Aaron Donald, great player. Jalen Ramsey, great player. Cooper Kupp, great player. Matthew Stafford, a great player. But like, do they have any like leaders that have shown this year that they're leaders like that? I don't really know if I've seen that from any of their players. Like, I don't know.
One thing I think we have to bring up, because I think this is really important. I think this does not get talked about enough. Matthew Stafford is in a new system this year as well.
Yeah.
And I think that is a pretty huge factor. I think two things that really like seem to get overlooked is, okay, how many years has a quarterback been running their system, and how much of the coaching staff is returning? I think those are two things when you look at teams and how they kind of play, especially early on in the year. It's one of the biggest things of like, okay, like it's going to take a little while to gel, because a coaching staff and the roster, if most of those coaches have been there and you have like at least a guy in every single position group that has been with them for a couple seasons, which is every year, I would say pretty much every team has that. Like, it's pretty rare that you just have like, oh, we have every single corner that is only been in the year for a year or less. Like that doesn't happen very much. You have the coaches like that, but like a quarterback in a new system, that's huge. So I think that's a big factor of why they start out slow. I do wonder, what's your expectation for them? Because I still expect them to make the playoffs. I expect them to make the playoffs as the 5th seed still, but it's more about, I think that they're going to be a team that loses in the playoffs. Like, and not like it's, oh, what a bold take, they're going to lose in the playoffs. Like every team except for one team does that. They're a team that I thought was going to be like them and the Bucks were the two clear best teams in the league. Not clear, but like they're the two like in that tier 1.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're there. And even though they beat the Bucks, also I don't really value that much, because how many times does Brady lose in the regular season to a team and then beat him in the playoffs? So that probably gives me more reason to believe that Brady's going to win if they meet up. But I don't know if I look at them in that same like tier 1 anymore. I don't look at them actually. I really don't. But I don't know. What do you think they're gonna kind of look like?
I'm gonna say I see them still in that tier 1. However, they're just a tier 1 that like can play down to their not play down to their competition, play below their competition, and just come out completely unprepared some weeks. And I mean, that's what we've seen the last 2 weeks. I mean, I think they overlooked the Titans. Titans coming off of losing Derrick Henry, and everybody was like, "Oh, look at that, push over Titans," and they looked atrocious. And then, they go up against the Niners, a division rival, which I think maybe they were looking forward towards that bye week, but this is the perfect time for a bye week for them. 2 losses. They get to prep for a massive game against the Packers. And then they get to play the Jaguars. And then they play, big time divisional games against the Cardinals and the Seahawks. Like, I think this is a team that will recoup. They will rebound. And I still see them as a tier 1. However, I do expect them to be a team in the playoffs that doesn't lose a close game. They're going to get thrashed. I mean, it's going to be similar to, I can't remember who the Eagles played in the NFC Championship game when they won the Super Bowl. Was it the Vikings? I want to say it was the Vikings. Like, where it's like that, where like they just come out and just get, like, even though like you expect a good game, oh wow, look at this defense, look at these offensive weapons. Like, I feel like when they lose in the playoffs, it won't be close. It'll be they came out and just looked completely unprepared. The benefit is they will have played all of the competition that they will play in the playoffs. That they play the Cardinals, they're going to play the Packers, they played the Bucks, Niners, Seahawks. Like, the only team is potentially like maybe the Saints if they're able to squeeze in. The Cowboys is a team that they haven't played, but like, overall they're going to have faced a lot of this top end competition. It's just whether or not they actually come to play. And I don't think they'll come to play every single week in the playoffs. There will be a week where they fall, and it could be in the Super Bowl, where they come out and they play against a team and they just fall apart. And that's an issue that I have. It's like, you never want to be on a team that has that problem. It's not like a one-time thing. The Packers this year, week 1, they fell apart. They looked atrocious. They got stomped by the Saints, but that was a one-time thing. This has happened 3 times to the Rams, where they have just come out and looked not like bad, horrible. Like it looked like they were the Jaguars, the Lions. Like like Matthew Stafford didn't look like Matthew Stafford. Aaron Donald wasn't doing anything. Jalen Ramsey was getting like it's like I don't know. I'm worried that in the playoffs they will have a game where they just completely look unprepared.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right. Do you want to move on and start talking about some games, or is there any other topic that you want to talk about?
No, I'm gonna just start talking about some games.
All right. So, game of the week. I know you told me what your game of the week prediction is. Do you want to start with what you think is the game of the week?
Yeah. So for me, and this is just in terms of like what I think is going to be the best game. You can easily talk about the Chiefs and the Cowboys if you just want to watch an offensive slugfest. Now I say that, and it's going to end up being like a defensive battle. Like the weirdest thing you could imagine. But in terms of like the one that's kind of like the most underrated, just kind of under the radar games, my favorite is the Colts and the Bills. The Bills are another team that I think hasn't looked as good as I thought they were going to do. I thought they were potentially going to be that number 1 seed in the AFC. The Colts, on the other hand, start out super slow. Everybody writes them off. They are 1 game lower, and their record is 1 game worse than the Bills at this point. I think that you could see them in the week with the same record. I really think that there's a likely chance that the Colts go into Buffalo and win that game, pound the rock, and beat the Bills, who have not looked super great over the past month. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I definitely agree. This is a great game to look out for. I think we've talked about it on this show. I know we've talked about it off camera. I think that the Colts are really underrated this year. And I felt that the entire year. I felt like a lot of people saw them in week 3, week 4, and everybody's like, this is that Colts team. They got Carson Wentz, and this is the team. Like, this was a team that I felt like could potentially be a Super Bowl contender if everything's going well. And right now, this run game that they have is amazing behind Jonathan Taylor. And are the Bills going to be able to stop that? I don't think so. I know that statistically the Bills have had a pretty good rush defense in terms of rankings against other teams, but you have to think about it like this. The Bills, especially at the beginning of the year, they were blowing teams out. Everybody was trailing by a ton against the Bills, so you got to throw. Now that the Bills' offense is, I don't want to say petered out, because it's still very, very good, and you cannot, take them lightly. But they're not going out there and putting up, I don't expect them every week to put up 40 like I was at the beginning of the year, because they were just, everything was churning for them. And they're still a great team. They're still a great offense, maybe the best offense in the NFL. Of course, I say, don't expect them to put up 40. They played the Jets last week. Okay, guys, calm down. Everybody should put up 40 against the Jets. But, Jonathan Taylor, I think, is going to be a problem for them. But I think this is the game. Even though it kind of happened last week, but again, it's against the Jets. It doesn't count. This is the game where we see Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. Like, I think this is that week where it's been everybody else. Oh, everybody else, look at that. And everybody's kind of forgotten. Oh, Stephon Diggs. People trade him away in fantasy. Everybody's kind of losing out. Not that he's a bad player, but just that, he's not as dominant. Last year was kind of a fluke, leading the league in receiving and all that stuff. This is where he shows out, and he has one of those Diggs games. He always has a couple every year, where he goes for 180 and 2 touchdowns. He even hits 200 sometimes. I feel like this is that game where he goes off, Jonathan Taylor goes off, and it's a real shootout, and it comes down to who's the better quarterback between Josh Allen and Carson Wentz. And I'm going to say this week it's going to be Carson Wentz. I think this is going to be a big-time game for him, and he's going to step up and be that guy. So, but I think it's going to be a terrific game. And I think Carson Wentz pulls it out, but this is going to be a big-time showing between 2 AFC contenders. It's crazy to say AFC contenders, even though they haven't gotten that many wins. It just shows that how open the AFC is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so you think the Colts are going to win?
I do. I think they're going to shock a lot of people. And it's not going to be a game where everyone goes, oh, the Bills didn't come to play this week. Like the Jaguars, obviously, it's like, okay, Jaguars played great, but the Bills, they didn't come to play. The Bills are going to come to play. And this is going to be a really, really good game.
So I want to talk about what you said about Diggs first, because I think that's interesting. I guess in terms of fantasy, you could say he dropped off, but performance-wise, no. He's the same dude he was last year. I don't really get that. He still separates a crazy amount. Also, he's got flagged, like, or the defensive players on him, whether it be a corner or safety or whoever it is, have got flagged for pass interference many times this year. Like deep shots down the field in the games I've watched, where it's like, yep, look at Diggs make an impact. Look at all those yards that would have been caught if the corner didn't jump on his back or whatever happened. Another guy, Carson Wentz. Guys, Carson Wentz is like looking like he is not MVP level Carson Wentz. I don't think he's ever going to reach like that like, I don't know, that performance level again, but he is having an amazing season. If you take away the 2 games against the Titans, he's been really good outside of that. And overall, right now his touchdown to interception ratio, and I don't know how many he has rushing, but passing is 17-3. That is really impressive. And then one of those games that I mentioned, the Titans games, in one of those games, he threw 2 picks. So like he has been lights out against pretty much every other defense besides the Titans. And then, of course, like there's games where he doesn't have like crazy stats or anything. But that's because Jonathan Taylor is probably having a crazy game. So I don't know. It's surprising that he gets slandered as much as he does. I really don't get that. And I like Carson Wentz, but I'm not like super high on him or anything like that. I just don't know. Like people don't think he's good. And he's been great. And people don't think he's been good this year. And they think that the reason that the Colts have struggled is because of him. Well, they're not struggling anymore. And it looks like Frank Reich. You remember when Doug Peterson was getting all that credit in Philadelphia? Pretty clear now that that credit should have gone to Frank Reich for having that amazing offense. Look at how that's kind of ended up. Doug Peterson's not even coaching. He kind of opted out this season, but don't think there's an NFL job coming for him soon in terms of head coaching job. Frank Reich looks like he is putting together a really, really good team and consistently exceeding expectations in Indianapolis. So I don't know, man. I am just surprised that he kind of gets slandered as much as he does.
I think that just comes from him being from Philly. And most people hate Philly fans. Philly fans started hating Carson Wentz, and it was just like so much negative press always towards Carson Wentz from just everybody that like even when he left, like people just root for him to fail, which is just something that like, but the guy like he hasn't done it. Like the only thing he did was have an injury problem. Like he got hurt. That was like the problem with him. It wasn't like, oh, he chokes all the time. It was like, no, he's gotten hurt 3-4 years in a row or whatever it was, gets hurt. They win the Super Bowl playoff game against the Seahawks and gets hurt. Just big time games. He gets hurt sometimes, but he's always been pretty good. He's slowed down in Philadelphia over the last couple of years, but they also like lost all weapons that they had. And it was just like, he was thrown to old man Alshon Jeffrey. And then they were like, all right, man, we got you this new wide receiver. And he's like, oh, you got me Justin Jefferson. Even better, we got you Jalen Reagor. Yeah, go for that. We also got you old Deshaun Jackson. So are you ready to dominate?
And then look what they do right after. Then they go get a sweet dude like the
I know, right?
Like, he's like, dude, what the heck, man? Hey, Pittman looks good, though. Pittman and him look nasty.
Pittman's been great with him. And, overall, like him, Pittman and Jonathan Taylor is enough weapons for him because of the defense that they have. And they had forced a turnover in every single week up until I believe last week was the first time that they did not force a turnover. And they were one of the few teams in the NFL that has done that. Like their defense is making plays. They don't have a ton of playmakers on their defense, I would say. Like they've got some great players, Darius Leonard, DeForest Buckner, like some terrific players, but a lot of no-name guys that people don't really know yet, but they're still going out there and making a lot of plays for this team. And when you can pound the rock and you have a really stout defense and your quarterback's not turning the ball over, that is a recipe to win in the NFL, no matter what area you're playing in.
Absolutely, man. So what's your game of the week?
I got to look to Sunday Night Football. You and I have talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers a ton. And we came out with so many videos just talking about, guys, this team isn't done. Just because Big Ben is old, just because they've lost, Bud Dupree, does not mean that this team is done. Their over-under wins on the season was at 8.5? And we came out with a video, I think, that said
it might have been 7.5.
It might, which is even worse. And we were like, this is the most guaranteed money you will make, is betting on the Steelers, because nobody thinks that they're going to be good. And everybody after like week 3, they were like, oh, Big Ben looks terrible. He's so bad. It's like, oh yeah, because they decided never to run the ball with Najee Harris. Like they were just dropping Big Ben back and they were like, yeah, let's just throw it. They were throwing to Najee a lot. And he was doing great in the passing game. But all of a sudden they play the Broncos.
Some of that was also because Deontay was out.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge factor. Like you have to have both those guys for them. So go ahead. Sorry,
Deontay Johnson, very underrated wide receiver in the NFL. And you go out there and then they played the Broncos, and that's when everything changed, because that was the first game where they said Najee's going to win us this game on the ground. And that's exactly what he was doing all game long up until they took him out at the very end. And they stopped running with him nearly as much. But like overall, this team, this defense, they were injured at the beginning of the year. They're coming into form. And then, Big Ben and Najee are getting on pace. Obviously, Deontay Johnson is back and he's playing well. Juju has gotten injured. He's been out, or he's out for the year, I believe. But like they've brought it back. And Big Ben, he's not the same. He's not 2007 Big Ben. He's not 2012 Big Ben. He's not even 2016 Big Ben. But he's a veteran quarterback that knows how to handle himself in situations, that knows, hey, I don't have that deep of an arm anymore. Let me hit this great route runner in Deontay Johnson and this explosive running back in Najee Harris. And that's how they're going to win. Defense and a run game once again. And then you look at the Chargers coming off of some tough weeks, but still a really, really solid team that wants to go out there and just put up some good numbers. And Justin Herbert's going to put up good numbers. Austin Eckler, good numbers. Mike Williams not putting up those numbers anymore, but that's been replaced by Keenan Allen putting up good numbers. Like overall, this is a team that they can play with anybody. But this is another team I talked about it with the Rams. If Herbert comes out flat, which has always been the knock on him in his career, not just in LA, but at Oregon, if you throw him off his game, he's going to be terrible. And the Ravens and the Patriots got him off his game. And when you get him off his game, the Chargers will not win whatsoever. And he's going to be off for that night. If the Steelers can find a way to make Justin Herbert get off, they'll be able to win this game handily. But if they don't, it's going to be a really, really good game between two really tough opponents that, again, going to be competing in the AFC, could very well be playing each other in the playoffs, because it's just so open in the AFC right now. So like this is huge consequences. The Steelers are half a game back in the AFC North. The Chargers are right behind the Chiefs in the AFC West. There's so many things to look at right now.
They have the same record, right? The Chargers and the Chiefs. No, the Chargers.
I think they're one game back.
They're
half a game back. It's tough.
Yeah, so I would say it is interesting that, how underrated the Steelers were, especially after they started out slow. Their recipe is, on offense at least, is we're going to use Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris as much as we possibly can, and those guys are going to give us a little bit of offense, and our defense will do the rest, and then we'll scrape out wins. Are they going to be some deep playoff run team? No. But I don't know, me and you talked about it a lot. Like, they're going to be a team that is going to win games and be in the mix, because they always win games and they're always in the mix, and they have a very, very, very good defensive roster. I mean, you're talking about like they're getting Devin Bush back, and that was something we talked about a lot, about how underrated that was. When I turn to the other games, I see him out there making plays. You see Mika Fitzpatrick making plays, Cam Hayward as well. And then, of course,
TJ Watt in prime time against the Seahawks.
That was pretty special, huh, when we saw that one. So, I don't know. I just find it interesting that they kind of get forgotten about. I want to see, what is the line in this game? Do you know it off the top of your head?
I can pull it up off of ESPN.
Yeah, because I'm just wondering, because I think the Chargers are a pretty good team this year.
Chargers -6. Chargers -6. Wait, what?
Are you serious? Like, I would think that it would be like Chargers like -1 or 2.
Yeah.
And like I would probably say that the Chargers should win this game. That's crazy. All right. Well, I know what I'm going to do after we wrap up here. But that's nuts. Wow. The Chargers are good. Like, I'm not trying to knock the Chargers. I think they're a good team. I think their defense is a little bit better than I thought. Now, having Derwin James definitely improved them so much from last year because he was out with injury. But, man, this is going to be a really fun Sunday Night Football game. I hope we don't see a blowout either way because, I mean.
Also, this is assuming Big Ben is playing. And Mike Tomlin said that Big Ben doesn't need to practice if he plays.
Oh,
so,
yeah, I don't think he would.
Yeah. So.
Also, yeah, look at that Lions game. They're starting Mason Rudolph. Big Ben isn't great, but Big Ben is like one of those quarterbacks where it's like, they're shot, but the guy behind him is so bad. And them just...
It makes him look like an MVP.
Yes, him just being like a knowledgeable and intelligent quarterback and like understanding the system well and like being able to run it like maybe with a shot arm, it's still so much better. And I don't think Big Ben is a very good quarterback right now. But like I said, like you have Najee and Deontay, and you have him able to somewhat run the offense. They just put up enough on the offense to just barely scrape out Wentz. Like that's what they do. Yeah. And then defensively, if they're up or they're tied, I mean, you saw it in the Lions game. Like their defense kept them like they would have lost if it wasn't for their defense. So and also they like. You can go back and forth at that game. That game should have been ended like 50 times. And they probably should, and like you can look at the last play and the was it Freiermuth fumble at the end and like, oh, the Steelers should have won, but like also the Lions missed a field goal. Like, so it was just really ugly and bad, but it's a one game. This is going to be, I think, a big bounce back game, having Big Ben back, having that defense ready to go. It'll be a fun one, but I don't know. Anything else you want to add on this one?
No, I think that's all. I just thank you everybody for watching the stream or watching the podcast or watching the podcast segment or whatever it is. We try and stream Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then, this week we only got it out on Thursday, but no, try and stream Tuesday and Thursday. And then we post the segments, throughout the week. But thank you, everybody. We'll see all of you again next Tuesday.